Okay, hello. Whoops. Hello, my bio seniors and maybe juniors too. Go ahead and get out the same thing that you've been taking notes on. Today we are gonna do day two of the circulatory system. So you can just continue on with the notes that you've been taking for the circulatory system, day two. And then what I want you to do before we jump into the lesson for today, I want you to do a little bit of review and answer these two questions. What does the right side of the heart do, and what does the left side of the heart do? So go ahead and pause, answer these questions, and then come back here. Okay, hopefully you paused and actually answered those questions and came back. So what does the right side of the heart do? Hopefully you remember that the right side of the heart is going to be the side of the heart that flows blood through your lungs. So your right atrium is going to take in blood, that deoxygenated blood that has flowed through your body, and then your right ventricle is going to send that blood back to your lungs, and then your pulmonary vein will bring that blood back to your left atrium, and then the left side of your heart is going to pump that blood that is now oxygenated through your whole body system. So right side deals with the lungs, left side deals with everything else in your body. Okay, so let's dive on in. Guiding questions. I struck through these two because we have already done these two. So we already learned about how blood flows around the body, and we also already learned about the difference between arteries, veins, and capillaries. You're still going to need to know it for your exit ticket today. But this lesson took 2 days because it was a little bit longer. But today we are just talking about the types of cells that are found in the blood. We're basically talking about blood composition. Same reason why it matters in the class and also why it matters in life. And then I kept my same joke because it's going to be funnier today. So human blood cells and Italian blood cells. Okay, so let's just jump right into your notes. Blood composition. So, blood is the fluid medium in which materials are transported around the body via your blood vessels. And we learned about the three different types of blood vessels: veins, arteries, and capillaries. And an average adult human contains roughly 5 to 6 liters of blood. So if you know, like a 2 liter 2 liter bottle of Coke, you have about 3 of those big bottles of soda of blood in your body at any given time. When we separate the blood by centrifugation, so that's where you just spin it around really, really fast and it causes it to separate out into the lightest density to the heaviest density items. When you separate that blood, this is what we see. We see this picture over here. 55% is going to be plasma. 45% are going to be red blood cells, or what we call erythrocytes. And then less than 1% is what we call the buffy coat. This is going to be made up of white blood cells and platelets. And you basically are going to learn about these three different components of human blood today. So you can probably guess we're going to start with plasma. So blood composition, plasma. This is what we are starting with. So you're just going to continue on your notes here. If you need to pause, take your notes, pause, take your notes, but I'm going to keep on trucking along. So plasma. Plasma is this yellow looking liquid here. You're probably like, what? That is in my blood? But yes, it is. Plasma is the fluid part of your blood. It consists mainly of water, and it dissolves materials and basically functions as the transport mechanism for all of the materials that are dissolved in the blood. Plasma also is going to contain electrolytes. These are just minerals that carry a charge, and those electrolytes are going to be really important for maintaining fluid balance and also maintaining the pH of the blood. Plasma also is going to contain proteins. And remember, this is important. Wink, wink, hint, hint. Proteins are made up of amino acids. So plasma has amino acids in it because it has proteins in it. And some of those proteins in the plasma do different functions. Some of them maintain osmotic potential energy, meaning maintaining the potential of osmosis to occur. And that protein's called albumin. We've also learned about that protein when we learned about protein denaturation, and albumin is a protein in egg whites as well. Just an interesting fact. Some proteins also are going to help transport lipids. So globulin helps to transport lipids because lipids, if you remember, are not water soluble. Lipids are like oil and fats, and we know that plasma is made mostly of water. So we're going to have proteins that help to transport lipids throughout the blood. That's what globulin can do. It can hook onto that lipid and kind of encase it so that lipid can travel through the blood, even though when it's mostly made of water. And there's also proteins that help blood clot. Blood clotting, although when you hear it, you might think negative, like, oh, a blood clot, that's bad. It can lead to heart attacks, of course. But blood clotting is also really important if you get, like, say, a paper cut. If I get a paper cut and my blood doesn't clot, then I'm going to eventually bleed out and lose all of my blood. So blood clotting is an important factor in healing. And that protein is called fibrinogen. Blood plasma also functions to transport various materials needed by the body and waste produced by the body cells, and that's what I'm going to show you on this next slide. So make sure you have these notes for plasma, and then we have one more slide on plasma next. So some of the things, get rid of my face, some of the things that are transported in the plasma to be used by the body include nutrients. Nutrients are needed by cells to make chemical energy. Example, glucose. This is a huge, really important nutrient that is dissolved in blood plasma. Try and think about why glucose is extremely important to be dissolved in blood plasma. What do we need glucose to do? If you said cellular respiration, yay, you are connecting everything together. Like I said, everything in biology connects back. So we need glucose and oxygen in order to do cellular respiration, which then provides us with energy so that we can do any kind of function that we need to do. So we've got to get glucose to all of our cells, just like we have to get oxygen to all of our cells, and that glucose is going to be dissolved in blood plasma to be transported. There's also antibodies in blood plasma. Antibodies are involved in identifying and eliminating pathogens and invaders. Antibodies are really important for our immune system. There's also carbon dioxide in blood plasma. This is the waste, the byproduct of cell respiration. So when our cells use glucose and oxygen to make ATP energy, if you remember, they also release carbon dioxide and water, and that carbon dioxide will be dissolved in the blood plasma, carried back to your lungs and your heart, and then once it gets to your lungs, you can breathe out that carbon dioxide waste and breathe back in more oxygen. We also have hormones in our blood plasma. Hormones are chemical messengers that move through our bloodstream. Hormones are involved in a ton of different processes, whether that's a fight or flight response, or puberty, or even childbirth. So hormones are always kind of pumping through your body system. Hormones are also really involved in the stress response. Oxygen is also going to be transported by the blood. We require oxygen in order to do that aerobic respiration, do cell respiration for energy. So oxygen is super important. Urea is also going to be transported in blood plasma. Urea is a waste compound, and it's excreted. It helps to remove nitrogen from the body. Urea is a main component of urine, but it's going to be transported through your blood plasma, eventually transported to your kidneys and to your excretory system so that you can remove that excess nitrogen from your body through urine. And then last but not least, heat. I know this is not really a molecule and it kind of sounds confusing, but it's still a really important component of our blood plasma. Our blood helps to keep our body heat at the right temperature. And so heat is also transferred through that blood plasma. And you're probably looking at all this and like, okay, why is there a picture of Nacho Libre saying, it's because you can use that to remember these different materials that are transported by blood plasma. So if you look, Nacho, is basically the way you can remember this. Nacho for nutrients, antibodies, carbon dioxide, hormones, oxygen, urea, and heat. And if you remember Nacho, then you can remember all of those things that transport in blood plasma. The one thing that's not on this list that I wish was, but I couldn't figure out how to add it in, if you can figure out how to add it in, that'd be awesome, is proteins or amino acids. So when you think antibodies, you could also think A for amino acids, because those are also going to be in the plasma. But that's it for plasma. So pause me, take your notes that you need to take, and then we're going to move on to our next component of blood, which is red blood cells. Red blood cells are also called erythrocytes on the IB test. You will see it as erythrocytes, or once you're in college, you'll see it as erythrocytes. So just make sure you know both. They are mainly responsible for transporting oxygen around the body. Super, super important to get oxygen to all of our cells so that we can do that cell respiration, and so that we can have energy. Red blood cells also will transport some carbon dioxide waste as well back to your lungs so you can breathe out that waste. Oxygen basically binds to the hemoglobin at the lungs, and it is released from the red blood cells at the capillaries at different body tissues. So your red blood cell will flow from your heart to your lungs, where your lungs will then, where your red blood cells will basically bind the oxygen in their hemoglobin, which is a part of the red blood cell. And then the oxygen is bound to the red blood cell. The red blood cell will travel back through the left side of the heart, travel to somewhere in your body, like your fingertip. And then once that red blood cell is at a capillary, those really, really thin blood vessels, then that oxygen can be released to your fingertip so that all the cells in your fingertip can do cell respiration and have the energy that they need, which is pretty cool. Now, looking at this is like a 3D artist picture of what red blood cells look like. Looking at this picture, I hope you can pick out which ones are probably red blood cells, because some of these are not. Some of these are other types of cells we're about to learn about. But hopefully you said that these are the red blood cells. So all of these blood cells that are donut shaped, those are the red blood cells. These two cells and these smaller cells we're going to learn about next. So that's actually it for red blood cells. So pause me, take your notes on red blood cells, also called erythrocytes. Make sure you know that, and then jump back in. So last but not least, we are going to talk about the Buffy coat. I don't know why it's called the Buffy coat. It just is. But I can fit right here. Hi, guys. So the Buffy coat is a very, very small fraction of a blood sample. Like we said, less than 1%. It is what contains the white blood cells and the platelets. White blood cells, also called leukocytes, these are involved in the body's immune defense. It is how we eliminate infections. So this is an example. Both of these actually are examples of a specific type of white blood cell or leukocyte, which we're going to go more into depth next. Platelets are these really small little cells that almost look like little purple dots. Those are involved in blood clotting. So platelets are used to help blood clot, which can repair damaged blood vessels, and also it can prevent blood loss if you get cut. So that's all you're going to get for platelets. And then we're going to go a little bit more into depth about two different types of leukocytes or white blood cells right now. So if we are talking about white blood cells, also known as leukocytes, there are two main types that you should know. The first is a phagocyte. The great thing about phagocytes is that the name basically tells you what it does. If you remember, we learned about phagocytosis way back, I think, in Unit 1 or 2, which is when cells engulf things that they need. So phagocytes are a type of white blood cell that basically, if your body identifies a bacteria or a pathogen, it is going to engulf that bacteria or pathogen, and then it's going to kill it by also killing themselves. So phagocytes kind of get one shot. If they see a bacteria or a pathogen or some kind of invader, they will engulf it and then attempt to kill it by killing themselves as well. Phagocytes are going to conduct the same immune response for any type of invader. They always engulf the invader and then kill it by going through apoptosis and killing themselves. Lymphocytes, on the other hand, are going to produce antibodies to specific pathogens. So lymphocytes are going to be really specific and generate a specific immune response against an invader, and then they can remember that pathogen should you be invaded again. So phagocytes are kind of like your first defense, kind of like I'm not sure how to, I'm trying to think of a metaphor, but phagocytes are going to be the cells that are going to kind of be your first line of defense. Oh my gosh, I see this invader. I need to try and kill it immediately. And they will always do that same immune response. Whereas lymphocytes might be a little bit slower to respond, but they create a specific immune response against that invader, kind of like figuring out that invader's weakness and then playing off of that weakness. This lymphocytes, the idea of vaccines, all of these ideas, which are really important right now, are based off of this idea that we need to produce antibodies for specific pathogens. So when you go get your annual flu shot, what is in that flu shot is actually a really small amount of, say, of the flu virus, and a small enough amount that it doesn't make you sick, but a large enough amount that it creates this immune response, so that you create antibodies to the seasonal flu, which in the hopes, if you do get invaded with the flu, instead of having that really slow response, your body already has those antibodies, already knows what that is, can recognize it, and immediately kill that pathogen. So that's kind of the idea behind vaccines and what they're trying to create a vaccine right now for COVID-19. Here are what these look like. It is important to know the difference. So phagocytes are going to be really grainy. They have little tiny dots in them that's can be invading pathogens. So you'll have to be able to recognize the difference between phagocytes, which are going to look something like this, and lymphocytes, which are going to look something like this instead. So lymphocytes have sort of one large nucleus, whereas phagocytes have a lot of smaller little organelles inside of them. And these obviously around it are erythrocytes or red blood cells. All right, so that is almost it for your notes for today. So what your first activity is I just want you to draw this table in your notes. You can copy it into your notes, and then it is your job to add this function column. I have gladly and kindly given you the drawings column or the diagram column, so I just need you to do the function column, and you can get those functions from all of the previous information that I've given you. If you want, on the cell side, you can also write in parentheses the words that make more sense to you. So erythrocyte is also called a red blood cell. Phagocytes is a type of white blood cell. Lymphocyte is a type of white blood cell. Platelets are also a type of white blood cell. And then plasma, you don't need to draw a diagram because plasma is literally just a fluid. But make sure you draw these, and knowing these differences are really important for being able to recognize these blood cells. So that brings me to your second activity. This should be super duper quick. It's literally 5 questions. It's basically what a quick check. You are going to use the linked Google form and your notes to complete the quick check, where basically I just need you to identify the different cells in this microscope slide of human blood. So you're going to tell me, what are cell A? What type of cell is cell B? What type of cell is cell C? What type of cell is cell D? And what type of cell is cell E? I will give you a hint. You are going to have to use one label twice. It'll make sense when you look at the quick check form. So go ahead and do that. And then last but not least, you are going to do an exit ticket to end the day. Oh no, was I all in the way earlier? I hope I wasn't. I'm sorry if I was. But once you feel confident about the material, go ahead and complete the circulatory system exit ticket, which is linked on Google Classroom. You can log on to office hours tomorrow as well. I'll be doing office hours tomorrow. The time is different just for tomorrow because I have a meeting at 2. So my time for office hours tomorrow is 1 to 1:30. We can go over any questions you have about this lesson. And then I know it's not a meme, but I thought it was a cool fact. If laid in a straight line, the circulatory system of an average adult would surround the earth 2.5 times. Pretty crazy. So make sure you get all of that work done. And as always, pop into office hours if you need help. If these office hour times don't work for you, just shoot me an email or a remind message and we'll find a time where we can connect. Just let me know. And as always, make today awesome, y'all. Miss you all. Hopefully I'll get to see you all soon. Have a great day.